Former President Trump in the crowd last night listening to those former rivals talk about unity. But one of the most powerful moments so far this week came the day before, Monday night, when President Trump made his first appearance since being shot in that failed assassination attempt. His son, Don Jr., watched the tape, got emotional.
Thank my lucky stars to be living here today, 'cause the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away. And I'm proud to be an American.
You know, it would be great if it was possible to talk to Don Jr. about what he was thinking at the time. In fact, joining us right now
can book him.
The guy from the Cutaways shows up live.
We know a little bit about the pollen that's in the arena.
It's a killer.
Allergies, guys.
Oh, come on. It was your father. He got shot. You were, and everybody was emotional.
It was actually incredible. And when you juxtapose that to the scene in 2016 at the convention, right? It was very different. There was so much uncertainty about their candidate, and I almost got in a fist fight with Mike Lee on the floor, who's now like a great friend.
That.
You remember that? It was like it was so different. The love I've felt over the last couple of days here is unlike anything I've seen before. You're walking up to grown men who you see them welling up. It's people understand exactly where our country is. They understand what's at stake right now, Steve. They're all in for America.
So when you had that moment, you knew he was going to walk out. We weren't sure. We heard that possibly he was going to walk out. Also, prior to that was who's his running mate.
Yeah.
And we found out it was flipping. It went up 2 or 3 deadlines were pushed for him to make that decision. Why do you think this decision was so hard?
Listen, I think he has to find the right mix, the right chemistry. I mean, he's a big sort of chemistry guy to work with. You have to. There's a lot of people, obviously, in politics, many on people's payrolls that sort of give, let's call it, partial advice about things, or they, tell you sort of lies by omission to get what they want. And so for me, I got fairly involved in the process just because I want to make sure that fix. I did. I've known the guy now for years. When his book first came out, I thought it was such an incredible American story. I was like, that guy's got to run for politics. Turns out, years later, he does. Young, intelligent, vibrant guy. Also did it in the business world. Just the perfect pick. And there is a chemistry with my father that I think is perfect.
Don, your dad has been impeached. Sorry, Steve. Impeached. He's been arrested. Now he's been shot. And the left is still questioning his injury. Listen to this.
There are a lot of questions around that ear, and yet there's been no response to that. Instead, just showing the image of the man coming into the hall with the wounded ear.
A spectacle for this candidate who we know is, by his own admission, obsessed with assorted spectacles. There is a political quest here to mine and use Donald Trump's injury, and whether his allies and Republicans or the candidate himself do that in a way that overextends their credibility will be decided by the voters.
They're wondering if he's using this for sympathy. Was it really glass from the teleprompter, not a bullet?
He wasn't shot in the face enough for them. It wasn't enough. He did more face. That's the point. They can't help themselves. The Trump derangement syndrome is real. It's so asinine that they could say that. I mean, you see the photograph at the time. There's blood everywhere.
You see the bullets whizzing by his ear.
That was an incredible photo as well. But I don't think any of that matters, honestly. They did the same thing to me when I was on the floor. Eric and I were there. We were going to throw my father over the delegate count. It's a huge moment for our family. And 30 seconds before that, some MSNBC, did your father put...
Hold on. We've got the soundbite.
Oh, good.
Roll tape.
I think he did spend a lot of time changing up the message of what it's been. He's been under constant attack, but it's a different time in America. A lot's happened in 48 hours.
Don, what is that change going to look like, Don? What practically, your father as president, I think you would even say, was a divisive figure. What's it going to look like in the second term?
I don't think he was a divisive figure at all. I think the media created divisiveness around him. They lied about Russia collusion. They said he was a traitor.
As you were saying.
Yeah, that wasn't the part. The part when he came out here and he said this here. He said, oh, will there be another child separation policy? You separated 8,000 before.
Yeah. And, well, he started talking about cages. And I'm like, this 30 seconds before this, 48 hours after my father was shot. I go, you mean the Obama cages?
Right.
And he goes, that wasn't true. I go, But it is true. It's 100% true. He's been fact-checked since. And I just said, you know what, honestly, you're a clown.
Yeah, just go away.
Go away.
Go away.
Why am I even wasting my time? Because 48 hours ago, my father was shot in the head.
Yeah.
And they can't stop. Right? This is the same as what they did with Russia. Even when they knew it was wrong, they kept going it. It was impeachment 1, it was impeachment 2. Democrats, just as bad. They're out there, they're trying to bankrupt our family. They're trying to take away my father's businesses. When that doesn't work, they try to throw him in jail. And of course, when someone spends years calling you a Hitler and a fascist and a this, and by the way, not just my father, half of the country. What do you expect?
So, Don, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the assassination of Tim. I told Eric, you know, he's normally the chill one. Normally, you're the one that's going. And when I saw Eric upset, then I knew that we had reached rock bottom.
I'm the fire breather
You're
normally.
the fire breather. The president was saying, which son said that? Was it Don? It was Don. It was fired up. So we found out that, of course, the assassination attempt happens. But then we later find out that the Iranians, weeks before, had been planning an assassination. You would think they would step up the security measures, but to see such failure there, that has to be infuriating.
It is. You know, I'm a pissed off son because of that. And by the way, as a shooter, and someone, by the way, I said hi to guys that were part of my detail. So I have a detail. I don't have one now, but I had a detail. I've seen my fathers for 8 years. I shoot with these guys because I'm a competitive shooter. They're not afraid of a little sloped roof. That's nonsense. They don't let, unless there's a major breach or they're told not to do something, they don't let a guy with a rifle be on a roof for half an hour inside 150 yards. Like, for people who aren't shooters, 150 yards is like a 6-inch putt, right? It's like it's almost impossible to miss. That's why I say, like, this is divine intervention, right? There's no way. It's almost impossible to miss that. And, you know, so, no, I am upset because that's true. I don't think this threat was tied to Iran. By the way, I think an Iran threat may be like one of the greatest endorsements in the history of politics, right? Yeah. If Iran hates you, like if our biggest enemies hate you, it's probably a good thing, right? It's like.
But what are you saying, Don? The fact, why was he left up there? If everything you said is true and the slope of a roof is not a big deal, and they had this guy on the side 30 minutes prior, and they had people saying while your dad was talking, look up on the roof, that guy's got a gun. What do you think?
It just a major breach. And again, I don't want to be the guy doing conspiratorial. I'm sure plenty of people will. And I think, honestly, all of those questions are fair game because it is so ridiculous. It is so flagrant. And this is not, you know, someone who's an armchair expert who's like, I've had a detail. I know these guys. I've shot with a lot of these guys. You know, again, if I told my friends in the Secret Service, like, hey, I heard you're afraid of a 4-degree sloped roof, they'd
laugh you off the couch. So you mentioned a moment ago, divine intervention saved your father. There are a lot of people at the convention feel the same way, that it was by the grace of God that he is alive today. How has it changed him? You know, because we heard in that interview he gave with the New York Post that he was going to give a different speech, ripped it up.
He did.
And now it's all about unity. It's all about bringing the country together. And he seems like a different guy.
Listen, I think getting shot probably changes a lot.
It's very
in
sobering.
terms of your mindset. I mean, you know, I worked with him on Friday for like 4 hours, actually, on his speech the day before it happened. So it was like there was a lot of time, effort, and energy put into it then and before, and he's starting from scratch, and it's interesting. You talk to him about it. It was that first call I had with him was sort of amazing. It took 90 minutes for me to even know. It was Saturday evening. My daughter, on the rare occasion, a teenage daughter, was like, "Hey, can we go fishing?" I was like, "Sure." Like I was out fishing with my daughter, and I get the call, and you know, your father's been shot. I was like, "And?"
Yeah.
Well, we don't know anything else. I'm trying then to get through, and I'm rushing in, trying to get all of my kids. Kim called me. But we didn't have any other information, and so it was an hour and a half before I even knew if he was alive or not. No one knew anything. Obviously, I guess they shut down all the cell service or whatever, so I couldn't get a hold of anyone. And then, you know, I finally, you know, I had time to even look at the pictures and see these things going on before I even spoke to him. I just saw that picture of him coming out of that scrum defiant, and I was like, I got on the phone. The first thing I said to him, it wasn't exactly eloquent, but I just said, you know, you're the biggest badass I've ever seen. like I've always been proud of him, but that moment I was like, because everyone's a tough guy these days on the internet or behind a keyboard or, you know, when you actually get shot at and you come out at, you know, that's a 1%er in terms of resolve, in terms of guts. And so that was amazing, and then sort of opened up the door for some other levity, and that's when it was like, the adrenaline dump after that was pretty crazy.
Thank
That
goodness he
was an
turned his head a
emotional
little
roller
bit.
coaster.
I know my daughter, we had to talk to her about it because we knew she'd hear about it, and we wanted her to hear it from us. She had so many questions. How did your children react to it? Because this is not the president. This is their grandfather. And how did Barron? I heard Barron had a hard time.
Yeah, he had a hard time with it. You know, he's fine, but he had a hard time with it, and it was interesting. I'm trying to explain to my 10-year-old daughter, you know, what's going on. My 17-year-old was with me. You know, my other kids, like, you know, sort of, it's all different. So you almost have to approach them all differently with their personalities. And they were just like, I couldn't believe it. You know, the older ones get it a little bit more. They understand a little bit more about the political arena and sort of the world in which we live. The younger ones less so. But I can assure you, there's a conversation you don't want to ever have to have.
Do you think we'll ever get the truth of what took place that day?
You know, I hope there's some sort of independent thing. You know, when the FBI, the same FBI that, you know, wants to label concerned mothers at PTA meetings domestic terrorists. Like, I don't know that we're going to get the truth out of them.
Like, Pam Bondi does not want the FBI to do the investigation.
I wouldn't trust the FBI to do anything.
The
right?
DHS
Like, I've lost so much faith in all of these institutions that that it happened, right? DHS is in control of Secret Service, and this happened. So it's like, you know, I can see the CYA, you know, starting to happen already, I'm sure. But, you know, there's no scenario in which I could imagine this being allowed to happen.
Your dad did appoint the DHS Inspector General who will handle this investigation. So hopefully we'll get some answers.
So what about your speech?
I'm just excited about it. You know, it's my speech too changed, right? I'm used to doing fire breathing. It's sort of what I do. Like, I can do that standing on my head, so that's easy. Like, you know, but no, I spent a lot of time to have a little bit of a different message. I think we need both, though, because I think America does need to still remember what we had and how quickly it disappeared from us in the last 4 years. I mean, it is at a point where if this continues, we're probably at a point of no return if we can't get it back on track. If, you know, another 4 years of these policies, the open borders, the fentanyl, we can't just forget about that. But I think we will take a little bit of a different tack.
But Don, I feel like you've changed too. Like, I mean, you're going to be Don. But I feel like you're taken back ever since the shooting as well.
Yeah.
There's a calmness about you ever since the shooting.
Said no one ever.
You're right, exactly.
Now, listen, I think you're 100% right. It is, like I said, I thought that was divine intervention. I watched it. I understand how these things work. I understand shooting. I'm just like, that was almost an impossible shot to miss. Right, when you think about it, inside of that range. And so for him to move his head sort of in an uncharacteristic way at that time, you almost see him lean forward a little bit. I'm like, just like, it doesn't happen. There's no other
You know why? You know why, right?
So
there are millions of people in America that are so spiritual, and they pray daily for your dad.
I think we created a couple more after this weekend.
I agree.
Do you think the goal could be, instead of 35 states, instead of a win, instead of 35 states, do you think about the possibility of a mandate of 45 for a Reagan-like win? Is that something you guys talk about?
Honestly, I don't, because I don't think anything changes. Right, we have to fight every day till the end, get every vote, every ballot. There's, you know, people are, oh, it's over now. I go, nothing is over. Nothing is over. We have to stay engaged. I don't think there's any level the other side won't go to. I mean, the same people who've been telling us Joe Biden's incredibly competent and, you know, yeah, he's the greatest Joe Biden we've ever seen. Actually, I'm like really? Like, I don't see that ever. But you know, and again, for me, I would love for him to have been successful because, you know,
it's our country.
Our lives were a lot easier before we were trying to get sued into oblivion and jailed, and they tried to jail me, and it never ends. And then you have this last weekend. So I'd love to see that successful because I have 5 young children. I want them to grow up in an America that we know and recognize. But that hasn't happened. So I think we have no choice but to be out there trying to fix the things that are so broken. And my father's one of the few badasses after, you know, that can go in there and actually fix those.
You're going to be in the big room tonight. We'll all be watching. Thank you very much. A big day for you and your family. Thanks for starting with us today.
Thanks so much.
Thanks,
All right.